This story comes from Argentina during the FIFA World Cup of 1978. And according to those who were there, one match was never truly finished. A young sports journalist named Michael Reed traveled from England to Argentina to cover the FIFA World Cup. Michael loved football. He had followed the tournament from city to city, writing articles and interviewing fans. One evening, after a match in Buenos Aires, he stayed late inside the stadium. Most people had already left. The floodlights were off, only a few maintenance workers remained. Michael wanted to take photographs of the empty field. He always believed empty stadiums had a strange beauty, silent, massive, almost like ancient temples. As he walked through the dark stands, he noticed something unusual. Someone was sitting alone near the upper rows, a man wearing an old football jersey. The jersey looked decades older than anything from the tournament. Michael assumed he was a fan who had stayed behind, so he approached him. "Excuse me, sir, the stadium is closing." The man didn't move, didn't even turn around. Then he quietly said, "The match isn't over." Michael frowned. "What match?" The man slowly turned. His face was pale, almost gray, and his eyes looked completely black. Churm. The strange warning startled. Michael stepped backward. The stranger stood up. His movement seemed unnatural, almost jerky, like a puppet being controlled by invisible strings. "The match begins at midnight," the man whispered. "Don't watch." Then he walked away, not toward an exit, not toward a stairway. He simply disappeared into the darkness beneath the stands. Michael followed him. But when he reached the tunnel, it was empty. No footsteps, no sound, nothing. The old caretaker. Shaken, Michael decided to leave. Near the stadium entrance, he encountered an elderly caretaker named Carlos. Michael described the strange fan. The old man's face immediately changed. He looked terrified. "You saw him?" Michael nodded. Carlos crossed himself. "Then you need to leave before midnight." "What are you talking about?" The caretaker hesitated. Then he revealed a story he had never told anyone. Years before the World Cup, a local football match had ended in disaster. A section of the stadium collapsed. Several fans died. Some bodies were never properly recovered. According to workers, strange things began happening afterward. Footsteps after closing, crowds cheering inside empty stadiums, shadowy figures sitting in the stands. And every year, on the same date, people claimed to hear another match being played, a match no living person could see. Michael didn't believe ghost stories. He was a journalist. He believed in facts. So instead of leaving, he hid inside the stadium. At 11:58 p.m., the stadium was completely dark, silent, empty. Then midnight arrived, and suddenly, he heard cheering. Thousands of voices erupted around him. The sound was deafening. Michael jumped to his feet. The empty seats were no longer empty. Every section of the stadium was filled. Thousands upon thousands of spectators sat motionless. None of them looked alive. Their skin was pale, their eyes hollow. Their clothes came from different decades. Some wore football jerseys from the 1940s, others from the 1950s. Some looked injured. Some appeared burned. Others had faces twisted by unimaginable pain. Yet all of them stared toward the field, waiting. The ghost players. Floodlights flickered on by themselves. The field glowed bright green. Two teams emerged from opposite tunnels. At first they looked normal. Then Michael noticed something horrifying. Several players had broken necks. One player's jaw hung unnaturally low. Another was missing an arm. Some had blood-stained uniforms. Yet they walked calmly onto the pitch. The referee blew a whistle. The match began. The ball moved impossibly fast. Players sprinted with inhuman speed. Bones cracked every time they collided. Yet nobody stopped. Nobody fell. Nobody screamed. The dead simply continued playing. Chapulthuren, the player without a face. As Michael watched, one player caught his attention. Number 9. He had no face. Where his face should have been, there was only darkness, a black void. Every time he touched the ball, the crowd erupted. The faceless player scored goal after goal. Impossible goals. Goals from impossible angles. And with every goal, the stadium grew colder. Michael could see his own breath. The air smelled like wet earth and decay, like a graveyard after rain. They noticed him. Then something happened. The faceless player stopped moving. The entire stadium became silent. Thousands of spectators turned simultaneously, looking directly at Michael. Every ghost, every player, every figure, staring at him. Michael felt his blood freeze. The faceless player slowly pointed toward the press box, toward Michael. Then all the spectators began chanting, "Join us! Join us! Join us!" The voices echoed through the stadium, growing louder, closer, hungrier. Frenary, the chase. Michael ran. He sprinted through the corridors beneath the stadium. But the tunnels had changed. The walls looked older, rotting, covered in dark stains. The chanting followed him. Footsteps echoed behind him, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. He glanced back. The ghost players were chasing him, still wearing their uniforms, still running at impossible speed. The faceless striker led them. The locker room, desperate, Michael burst into an abandoned locker room. He slammed the door shut. The room was empty except for one rusty metal locker. Inside the locker, he found something unexpected. An old newspaper clipping. The article described the stadium disaster decades earlier. At the bottom was a photograph. Michael's heart nearly stopped. Standing among the dead victims was the faceless player. The caption identified him as Alejandro Vargas, a talented striker who died during the collapse. According to the article, he had been only 22 years old, and he had been preparing for the biggest match of his life, a match he never got to play. The final whistle. The door exploded open. The faceless player entered, slowly, silently. He approached Michael, closer, closer, until he stood only inches away. Then something impossible happened. The darkness where his face should have been began to change. A human face emerged, young, sad, broken, not angry, not evil, just trapped. Alejandro whispered, "We never finished the match." Then he handed Michael an old football. The moment Michael touched it, a referee's whistle echoed across the stadium, a long, final whistle. The match was over. Every sound vanished. The players disappeared. The crowd vanished. The lights went out. Everything became silent. The aftermath. The next morning, workers found Michael unconscious near midfield. He was alive, but forever changed. He never returned to sports journalism, never attended another football match, and never spoke publicly about what happened. However, before his death years later, he left behind one final note, a note discovered inside a locked desk drawer. It contained only one sentence. If you ever hear cheering inside an empty stadium after midnight, don't look at the field, because some matches were never meant to end, and some players are still waiting for the final whistle.